our presenters today. We have Dave Sauerman, who is the Managing Director for the Construction and Engineering Division at CIBC Bank, located in Chicago. Dave has spent 34 years of his 38 years in banking, working exclusively with clients in the construction and engineering industries. He's been an active CFMA member, speaker, and author. He's part of the Illinois Road and Transportation Builders Association, American Subcontractors Association, the Illinois CPA Society Construction Contracting Committee. Dave is also the chairman of CFMA's Suicide Prevention Committee. Next up, we have Dave James, is a former CFO for F&F Construction, a heavy highway contractor based in Tempe, Arizona. He brings over 45 years of financial and corporate experience in the construction industry. David is a recipient of CFMA's Deborah Hahn Memorial Association and John Quigley Memorial Chapter Awards, and was presented the Valley of the Sun President's Award in 2015. In 2019, he received CFMA's Danny B. Parrish Outstanding Leadership Award. In 2016, he became active in suicide prevention and was appointed to the National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention. He currently serves as past chair of CFMA's Suicide Prevention Committee and also serves on the CIASP, Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention, and provides workplace resources to the construction industry. And lastly, but not least, Patsy Anderson Dunn is the CFO for Grow Construction in Portland, Oregon, which specializes in multifamily, light commercial, and residential construction. She's been in the construction industry for many years, starting on the job sites and in the office of the family construction business. Patsy has owned her own general contracting company, has been both an auditor and consultant to the industry, and is currently working as a CFO. Patsy has been a member of CFMA since 2009 and served in both a local and national capacity. She's on the executive committee for the Construction Suicide Prevention Coalition of Oregon. She was honored in 2017 as a 2017 Women of Vision in the Building Industry by the DJC. Patsy is the vice chairman of CFMA's Suicide Prevention Committee. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dave Sauerman.
Hey, thanks, Christy. And I'm seeing names of the attendees popping up, and I'm seeing all kinds of names of people that I haven't seen in a year or two. Greetings to all of you. Thank you so much for attending this virtual open house for CFMA's Suicide Prevention Committee. Again, I'm Dave Sauerman. I'm the new chair of the committee, and Dave James, the former chair, will be here, and Patsy Anderson Dunn, also new vice chair. You know, most of us who serve on this committee or otherwise active in suicide prevention have a personal story to tell. Often our lives have been impacted by suicide or mental illness. It may be a family member, a friend, or a coworker. We may have even struggled with mental health issues ourselves. Personally, I've been impacted by family members, friends, and colleagues. You know, once upon a time, we refused to speak about mental health or even acknowledge the pain and challenges that were faced by those to whom suicide seemed like a reasonable solution to their situation. People who struggled with these challenges were viewed as being weak or just having character defects. Just suck it up and get on with it. Well, this makes no more sense than telling a person with a broken leg to stop whining and finish the race. We've been trained to think of mental health as being separate and distinct from physical health. You know, setting aside the spiritual aspect for a moment, we need to acknowledge that our thoughts, emotions, even our personalities are but a function of chemicals and electrical impulses flowing through our gray matter. In this sense, mental health is really no different than, say, heart health or digestive health. Personally, I've spent more than 50 of my 62 years denying this reality. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do know beyond a shadow of a doubt that until we start discussing mental health and suicide in an open, honest, and empathetic way, we will not be able to get to the answers that we as a society need. First, we need to remove the stigma from mental health and from those who are struggling with suicidal thoughts. Those who are suffering need to be able to seek help without feeling they're being judged as lacking in character. Our companies and institutions need to view mental health on the same plane as physical health. More importantly, we need to build a level of comfort in discussing mental health and in reaching to those who are struggling. When I was struggling with my son's depression and suicide attempts, I eventually got myself to the point where I could speak about it. In fact, I wanted to speak about it. Once that happened, I was amazed at how many people began to come out and talk to me about their own struggles, either their own struggles or those of a family member or friend. I just had no idea, but they're out there. It's real, and it's quite a serious issue that is impacting the construction industry very, very heavily. Dave and Patsy well, first we're going to do a couple quick poll questions, and then David and Patsy, we're going to speak about the history of CFMA's involvement, the business case for suicide prevention, and some of the tools that we're trying to make available to our members and chapters. Please stick around for the Q&A, and please, if any of you wish to continue this conversation, please reach out to me. I'm always happy to share or just listen if that's what's needed. With that, I'll turn it back to Christy for the poll question.
Thank you, Dave. You should be seeing a poll question pop up. We're interested in what drew you to this open house. You can select multiple responses, and this will help tailor the rest of the presentation better for the audience. So we'll give this another few seconds here to give a chance for everybody to vote. And like Dave said, if you have questions, just pop them into the chat and we'll respond at the end. I think we're almost about done here. Give it another second. Okay. So the majority wish to learn more about suicide prevention. And it's pretty equal among the other three: to help your company, help your CFMA chapter, and for personal reasons. So thank you for doing that. Now I'd like to turn over to Dave James.
Thanks, Christy. Very good. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the history, why CFMA, why CFMs, and how kind of the genesis of how this thing all got started. It actually began, many of you know Cal Beyer, and Cal back in 2015 was putting together an article with another lady, Sally Spencer Thomas, for Building Profits, which thanks to Christy was going to go out into the magazine. And we were at the Southwest Regional Conference in Long Beach back then. And at the time, the idea was, or the thought was, that construction was within the top 9 industries for suicide deaths of our workers. Obviously, since then, we've learned that we're the top, not just within the top 9. But in any event, that was kind of an eye-opener for me and some of the other people there at that conference. So we talked about putting together a summit. In the Valley of the Sun, we went to the board of directors, and they agreed to go ahead and put together a summit to try and bring together some of the industry folks and some behavioral health folks, and that's crisis management people. So the first summit was actually held, Suicide Prevention Summit was first held in early 2016 here at the Valley of the Sun. And since then, there's been dozens. There's been a lot of summits across the CFMA chapter base. There's been a lot of lunches that have brought awareness to suicide prevention and ideas that have been shared among members, as well as a lot of conference sessions, both nationally and regionally, on suicide prevention. So it certainly has grown and broadened out as people have become aware of the issue. In fact, in later that year, realizing that this was kind of a monster we had by the tail, we set up the CIASP, the Alliance, to try and manage through this new issue that had presented itself to CFMA, just so that we could see how we wanted to proceed and where we needed to take it. So that's when CIASP was set up. And we'll talk a little bit more about the distinction and when it went to 501c3 here in a minute. But some of the things that come up is like why CFMA is involved with this, and why is the certified financial manager, the CFO, the controllers, why are those people so integral to this process and have been so critical to this development of suicide prevention and mental wellness in our industry? And I guess to me, it's probably a combination of three different things. One is being in the right place at the right time. Certainly with Cal and getting set up to do some articles that he was doing and being involved with CFMA, it just happened to be the right place at the right time to start the discussion. The other thing that CFMA brought to the table was the fact that we had roughly 100 chapters across the nation. So we had a good network, we had a good base in order to communicate out to other industry folks about the issue and be able to take it on from a pre-structured standpoint, if you will, and a good way to communicate out to literally 8,000 members at one point in time. And then the CFM is at a kind of a unique role within the company. And I think it's important when we talk about and we do the training programs, we talk a lot about teamwork and the fact that you need leadership, you need HR, you need your safety people involved. There's just a whole gamut of people within a company that need to have buy-in and are key leaders in making this happen within our companies. And the CFO, the controllers, the financial people are in a unique role of being connected with all those groups and having a lot of responsibility to deal with leadership, to deal with safety, to deal with the HR people. So they're a good change agent within your companies. And I think that's lended itself well to this process as we've developed it over the last few years. So why don't we go to the next slide? And so in 2018, the Alliance actually became a 501c3. We realized that its growth and the growth of this topic and issue for CFMA was needed to have its own creation, its own people, its own board, its own trustees in order to be effective, because it was such a large issue industry wide. So we set up the 501c3 with the CIASP, and the distinction is fairly easy to understand. We wanted to make sure that the CIASP maintained a broad industry and association focus. And again, realizing that that's outside the purview of CFMA, we then set up in 2019 the CFMA Suicide Prevention Committee within CFMA. So CFMA's focus is limited basically to our chapters and members, which is obviously what it should be. And then the Alliance is more industry and association. It's a broader focus that takes us out to industry groups and allows communication and working with those groups as we need to do. So with that kind of distinguishes between the two and why you have some information on both the CFMA websites and the CISP websites. There is a lot of overlap between the two because obviously a lot of the resources have been developed and shared back and forth. So there's a lot of information on both that I would encourage you to go to. And with that, because resources are such a critical part of wanting us to get out to our members, to get to our member companies, and to our chapters, I will turn it over to Patsy, who will talk a little bit about some of the resources and what's out there that hopefully people will be able to take advantage of. So Patsy, take it away.
All right. So I spent a little time on this, hitting our the different polling questions and trying to put as many resources down on paper for you to be able to use in the future. With this being kind of an open house and a provider of information, we like to spend most of our time discussing what you want to discuss, but we pulled resources. All of these you will notice there's probably something for every need, and there's probably some overlap, which is fantastic. The first slide, which was the first answer on the question, is learn more about suicide prevention. Not only did I hit the construction specific, our alliance and what CFMA works closely with, but the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention also has a broader look, and just with COVID and the way life is, that also plays into, you know, some harder issues on the construction site. I thought this was a great resource for now. If you have these slides, they're all linked, and you can get to many things. I won't go over each line because you can read probably better than I can. Can we see the next slide? So how to help my company, because most all, I guess, CFMA members either work for or work around construction companies. These are very specific to plans and not quizzes is not evaluations or questions or tool talks. There's so many things to help you build this in your company so you don't have to recreate the wheel. We've done a lot of it for you, and of course everything can be tailored, but here's a lot of resources to get started specifically to help your company. We'll go to the next slide. This is, again, from CFMA, the Toolbox Talks. Well, I know you've probably heard, or if you haven't heard, we're in the perfect industry because we're a safety-oriented industry, and we talk about safety, and we have safety meetings. Toolbox Talks are, here's a pile of 5-minute things that you could bring to a safety meeting to add to, you know, 3 points of contact, and don't put water in electrical cord, and please take care of your mental health also. So next. So I know a lot of us work at companies, and we may have a personal experience, and you're trying to bring it to your company. Let us help you help your company, you know, building the case. Why is suicide prevention important for your company, and what are steps for implementation? You know, our human assets are our greatest assets in our company, so why wouldn't we want to protect them? And if your company doesn't talk human emotion, maybe they talk money, because it costs a lot to hire someone else and retrain, and the whole workplace interruption if something were to go wrong. But hopefully they'll all have the human heart side of it. And there's tons of resources to evaluate your company, where you're light, where you may have some things covered, how you may take the next step. So these are great ways to get started if you're just at a point of, okay, I know we need to do something, but what and how? This is a great way to walk into your company and start with that. Next. Help my chapter. So that was our third choice of why we may have you attending. Again, getting the word out. Dave said in the beginning, you know, 5-10 years ago, we weren't even speaking of this, and now we're speaking of it, and we're actually able to do things. And other Dave said, you know, we talked about some of the the summits and some of the classes and some of the lunches, and how moving forward, and maybe your chapter is done a lunch but hasn't done a summit, or maybe they've done a summit but would like to do another one, or maybe your chapter hasn't done anything and you'd like to touch base. This section has all of the steps, where to start, ways to do it. You'll have to narrow down what you want to do and what works for your chapter. A lot of really good work in here, a lot of feedback from people who've done lunches or done speaking or had summits. And of course, I know Dave and I and the rest of the Suicide Prevention Committee and many others would love to help you either this going, or come help you do it, or be a mentor while you're doing it. We're all very, very open to helping you out. And we're hoping that part of you guys being here, listening, just wanting to have more knowledge, that we'll get more chapter champions across the nation. And with that, we can team up and get the word spread faster. So next. Yeah, this is, I put all this in here specifically because I would like you to see what it is to be a chapter champion and what that means. And it can be a little, it can be a lot, it can be a team effort. We're really hoping to get people across the nation. And so I put some more, yeah, I'm trying to voluntold you, like, here, we can do this, here, we can do that. You know, if all of you know me, you know how I am. So it's a pretty easy thing to get involved in. I think everyone on this call has some sort of touch or passion for this. Would love to have you all on this team. Next. This is more chapter champion. Sorry, I should have planned better to tell you when. So I know some of us start this journey. I started this journey because of a personal reason. I lost a son and I didn't know which way to look. And he was a low voltage wiring guy and didn't know which way to go. And so personally, I was destroyed. And ironically, I talked to Cal 1 year and 1 day, and look at me saying that without tears. It only took 5 years. That he called and said, have you ever thought about doing a suicide prevention summit? And I'm like, what's that? So taking all that pain and turning it into a passion. So I think there's a lot of personal reasons behind this. We put resources in here because yes, we are a company. Yes, we are construction. Yes, we want suicide prevention, but yes, there are some personal reasons. I just heard 5 minutes ago from a personal friend on this actual webinar that he lost a friend this last week or so. And that it's got to stop. We got to do something. And so this is a lot of great information, either for support to yourself, like what to say, what to do, or how to treat your own heart, how to do an intervention if you know ahead of time, how to start, you know, what we call upstream, you know, stop the problem, not treat the symptoms. So I think that these resources are really great, and perhaps some of you are searching for another answer, or maybe trying to straighten it out in your own head. I know that if I would have known what I know now when my son was coming home, I truly think I maybe could have asked better questions and he might still be here. So having these resources and the passion to pay it forward, or just know, or if I know someone's having a hard time, I can say, let's call the suicide prevention line. Let's talk to them. Let's see what they say. Or if you've had a loss, you can call them and get information. Anyway, lots of personal reasons. I know I'm supposed to only have 5 minutes. You know, I can't be quiet. So next slide. I think this is more personal. Yeah. So again, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Again, this is not as construction specific, but there's also more information there. I think we have done at CFMA and CIASP really have identified what we can do in construction. And I just saw someone pop up, why is it so prevalent in our industry? A lot of reasons. We're the tough guy job, you get hurt, you may have a backache, you get prescribed a opiate, you get prescribed an opiate, you get prescribed an opiate, and then you don't have one. That can lead to a bad place. We have a lot of easy ways to die by suicide with big equipment and high buildings, and We're also an industry full of men in the prime, what the prime ages for this, veterans, we're gun carriers. What am I forgetting? Go, Dave. I think
It's an
Got a lot of
industry
them.
of isolation. You know, you got your
Isolation.
job sites that are way away from family. They're away from, you know, church, family, community, and people spend a lot of time. We were with Heavy Highway, and Heavy Highway, you know, you're building roads out in the middle of nowhere,
In the
and
middle of the
loss of
night.
community and family, and you're missing family events.
Let me throw out another one, and that would be that quite often, you know, our industry is subject to cyclical swings in employment. A lot of layoffs, a lot of downtime, and the financial stressors that this can create can wreak havoc on a family and on a person.
Yeah. And even if you've got the resources with your company, like an EAP, our people don't reach out and seek the help. Part of what Patsy was saying about being the tough guy, and what Dave's saying about financial. There's a lot of resources out there that can be helpful, but our people don't reach out and seek them out, which goes back to Dave's issue of, you know, we got to speak out, get the dialogue going, so people are more comfortable doing that.
Hey, before we die, Patsy, I don't want to interrupt you. Are you still?
No, that was it. I just really wanted to get these, and we can get these slides out after I think Christy, right? And then maybe we should move to dialogue, because this is a perfect, I mean, that's a perfect jump off.
If you can give me a minute or two.
Yeah,
before we start into Q&A.
Yeah, we'll take questions on, you know, summits, being a chapter champion, anything you need to know about suicide. We'll answer anything. Go, Dave.
Well, I wanted to just say one thing before we started full bore into the Q&A part, and that is one of the things that CFMA did early on, you know, particularly with Cal Beyer and carried on by Dave James and Michelle Walker and all the other people who've helped put this thing together, is take the whole concept of mental health and suicide prevention and pull it out of the realm of we're just doing it because we're doing good things for our people and, you know, touchy-feely and all the rest of that, and made it a real health and safety issue. Started to attach dollars and cents. I wish I had the slides, and perhaps we can throw some of the slides when we pass this deck out to the attendees. But the amount of healthcare resources that go towards people who are suffering from depression, the amount of impact that means in terms of lost productivity is just mind-numbing. And in the competitive world that we all work in, you know, where the difference between winning a job and losing a job is razor thin, these costs amount to a lot. So it's nice to do the right thing for your employees. That's a good thing. I'm not taking anything away from it. But what has really brought, you know, when we spun off the CIASP, I have just been amazed at how many other organizations, companies, labor unions, the list is huge of people who are now in organizations that are now part of the CIASP and have kind of caught the wave. And I really believe that the real reason behind this is because of dollars and cents, health and safety. And with that, let's do some Q&A.
Also,
Christy, you're going to throw those out?
Yeah. If you also want to unmute yourself and ask a question, feel free to do that too. We want to make sure that you're getting everything you expected to out of the session. Our presenters are full of information and experience, and they definitely wish to help.
So I'll throw out a backwards question. If you're not going to ask me stuff, I'll put you guys on the spot. I'm wondering who has been involved in the suicide prevention efforts or chapter or of your company, and what the things that you are doing.
You can make your responses. There's little reaction buttons in your Zoom if you want to raise your hand, if you can't unmute yourself or you're not comfortable speaking.
You know, I'll pipe in right now and just, you know, mention one of the things that I have been really, really pleased about over the last year is not just within the construction industry, but broader throughout society. People are more freely discussing this and the challenges. You know, what brings to mind right now is ad I've seen recently on TV. Is it Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, has come on.
Yes.
Ali, what's the name of that advertisement? You guys remember?
Is it it's okay to not be okay or something
It's
like that?
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that. And he has, I think, one of his players who's been struggling with depression, talking about, you know, it's time to start talking about it. And when I see stuff like that, when I see, you know, even think what you want about the royal family, but when I see Meghan Markle, you know, stand up and start talking about mental health and her own struggles, and countless others coming out of the woodwork to talk openly and honestly, this makes me feel good because, again, I think so much damage is done by sweeping things under the rug and being scared or shamed into not seeking help, because anybody who's been through this knows it's not just the person who's suffering who's impacted. Almost everybody around them are impacted by this problem. And again, the sooner we get out and discuss it and make it, you know, top of mind, the easier it is to deal with.
Yeah. Well, and for those of you that haven't started it within your own companies, because I'll kind of camp onto what Patsy was saying as far as who has started it, either in your chapter or your company. I mean, when F&F started it, we had no rules to go by, and we didn't have a lot of the tools and stuff that are out there now. But I would certainly encourage you to look on the websites for some of the integration tools that will help you get started within your company. I mean, F&F, we started, you know, we put up posters and sent out emails was kind of our first starting. Say, hey, this is an industry issue. We want to take it on. And we started with some posters. We started working on weekly health alerts with our HR department. We partnered with our EAP programs. We did some lunch and learns. So, I mean, we just kind of started the communication and dialogue so it could become a natural discussion point, not something that you just kind of hide off into the closet because it's a topic you don't talk about. So there's tools out there now, both with the integration within your companies and the stand. There's a integration tool with a stand pledge that walks you down through the different acronyms and how to get started. And there's 3 levels of suicide integration in your company document that gives you levels and ideas of what to do and what might work within your company and your culture. But again, if anybody's already started down that road, I'd love to have someone else share as far as what happened within their company.
Dave, this is Marge. You know, we worked originally on that together and we were at that dinner together. But I want to tell a story about what happened at Iron Tree. Probably now 4 or 5 years ago. There was a guy on our on the job site who was having troubles, and he was being moved from site to site because he wasn't getting along well. with other people on the job. He worked great by himself, but you brought other people into the mix and there was an issue. So operations came to me because they knew of my involvement in mental health and suicide prevention, because they were worried about this guy. So make a very long story short, I questioned everybody that had worked with him. I talked to our operations guys, so I knew a little bit about him, but I brought him in to the office and I said, listen, this is not a thing to tell you, we really like you. We want you to be successful at Iron Tree, but we understand that you're having some kind of issues. So do you feel comfortable sharing them with me? And I shared with him before I did that I came from a place where, you know, with my son and a little bit about what my story was. And so that he would feel comfortable in sharing his story and being open and honest with me. And it ended up that it was quite an emotional meeting, and we ended up, and I said, well, how can we help you right now? And I'll tell you, sometimes it's not as easy, you know, they give you all these numbers, David, you know this story, and you don't always get a lot of help. So I ended up having to take him to the emergency room because he was in crisis. And luckily, it was at the time when the emergency rooms weren't overcrowded, and they were able to see him right away and get him hospitalized, and then further moved him on to a halfway house. As far as I know, last I heard, he was doing very, very well. He's on meds and was going to counseling and meetings and that sort of thing. But sometimes, for those of you that listening, sometimes it does take a personal intervention. If you see someone in your company or even someone in your own family or whatever that you deep down in your gut, because I think you can recognize when someone is in mental health trouble. I really do, if you look for it. And just step in. They're looking for someone. They may not ask you for it, and they may ask resentful a little bit at first, but they're really looking for somebody to help them. And Dave, you and I, you know, story after story after story, when someone was on the verge of a total breakdown or suicide, and someone stepped in and ended up saving their lives. So
connectivity is critical. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just
critical.
wanted to put in that little story.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thanks, Marge.
Yeah, I've been,
real quick, I just want to jump in. We do have a question from, or someone who's interested in speaking. Betsy, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yep. I just had a question on, obviously, with times like they are now. I mean, we're all kind of by ourselves, and what are some suggestions to look for in communications from people? You know, have they updated some of that stuff with everybody working remotely? You're not getting that interaction. You're not seeing that face-to-face stuff, overhearing conversations, things like that. I mean, what are your thoughts or suggestions on that?
So I'll take this if you'll let, boys.
Go for it.
Yeah, I know. Look at me, elbow my way in. Some of the things that I've been doing personally at my company, because like Marge says, you start a conversation, you can start to hear it. I have started to do a 10-minute Zoom check-in and with all of my people, and I'm having the guys in the field and ask the question, how are you? No, not how this job is, not how it's going, not any of those things. And I think it serves a couple things. Right now, everybody just needs a little bit of caring. Everybody needs a little bit of that. And the other thing I think it's really helping me do is build a very, very strong base with not only my team, but I've taken the executive team to be my babies too, my how are you babies, and just say 10 minutes, and there's set meetings, and anybody can stop for 10 minutes and get on their iPhone or get on their iPad or get on their computer. And it's kind of a joke because I'm the mom of the firm, right? I'm the mother hen. And so I will like, oh, I'm here for your weekly pecking. How are you? You know, and so it's kind of been funny, but it's really built a lot of really good camaraderie with me, with some of my superintendents that are like, why is the CFO calling me to say, how are you? I'm like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Right. So that's been really good. And again, I think what it boils down to is knowing someone, and you'll start to recognize as much, you know, Zoom is not sitting next to a person, but body language speaks a lot, right?
Mhm.
And a head down or a look down or not wanting to talk to you or the sound of their voice, even as we've started to do this on a continuous basis, you can start to pick up those things. So that's something that we're doing. And we have I don't know what you want to call it, a 50-foot safety meeting on Mondays where the guys stand in our shop, which is huge, and we yell at each other, our safety talks. And so, you know, my favorite thing to do when the owner's done with his safety talk is to yell, how are you? And, you know, everybody laughs a little and gives me a thumbs up or thumb in the middle or thumb down, or maybe no thumbs, but I'm watching their body language. And I also have 2 of my accounting staff say, okay, those 5 are yours and those 5 are mine. And so just watch their thumbs. Who do I need to check on? So that's my idea.
Betsy, I also want to jump in real quick. There on the CIASP, I popped it into the chat. There's there's COVID-19 specific resources that CIASP has provided. There's a URL to that in the chat. And then also Living Works is a program that the CIASP promotes. And what they do is teach you how to identify warning signs, and also teach you how to connect with someone you think might be at risk, and ways you can talk through it. And you go through different scenarios. It's about a half hour, 45-minute online training. And that's the first step. They have other levels, but I mean, I recommend that for everyone, really, just flat out for everyone. It's a great course.
So that's a huge program. And they also have a 2-day one where you're certified, and their image is, how do I keep you safe for now? What is it for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for an hour? But yeah, like Christy said, they have information of how you spot it and see it. We have it on CIASP, and we also have there's lots of resources to be able to know those identifying things. And for me, I didn't, like Marge is saying, she can feel it, and I don't know, I can now, but I don't think I couldn't have 5 years ago when my son called to talk to me to say, Mom, I'm coming home. No, I don't need help home. No, I don't want to be out here working anymore. I didn't hear it then, but he gave away his tools before he left. He was coming home, right? He's giving away his livelihood, right? That's a sign that he's giving up. He didn't want anyone to come with him to protect him. He has 4 brothers. Any of them could have flew out there, got in the car, and they would have had a heyday hell of a trip. You know, he was coming home because I truly believe he was coming home to me, but didn't come see me before he died because he didn't want to hurt his mom. So all those things now, but then, no way. Right? And there's so many resources, even if you read through those things, like giving away the tools, or so you're the CFO, someone comes in your office, how do I get a beneficiary on my 401k? What? A beneficiary? Why, are you planning on leaving me? You can leave it to me. You know what? In whatever relationship you have. Obviously, I'm a little bit of a jokester, but you know, those are signals, and so knowing those signals makes you ask bigger questions. And don't be afraid to ask. Like Marge asked the gentleman who came in, is there something mental health? You know, don't be afraid to ask, are you thinking about suicide? What can I do to keep you safe for now, for your kids, for your wife, for you? I care about you. What can we do together to keep you safe?
And it is tougher in these cyber times when you're having a lot of calls by
Yeah.
Zoom and and the construction workers in the field, they're still working as crews and teams. So it's a little bit easier in that setting. But again, you're looking for change. You're watching to see somebody's acting differently. And even with emails and the tone of the emails or the tone of the meetings on Zoom, if you spot somebody that's just not acting the way they normally would. I mean, those are the type things that we train about and that the training sessions will go through. And it's a little harder to spot maybe when they're not sitting right next to you and you're sitting there kind of shooting the shit back and forth. But there's still, if you're aware of what things you want to look for, some of those can be spotted, just a little bit more challenging in the cyber world.
Let me just throw one other thing out in here. Having gone through struggles with my family and other friends, again, one of the things that we found was most important about keeping people safe was just having somebody to talk to. It's so hard if you're suffering from issues like this to keep it bottled up without heading into suicidal thoughts. Just having somebody who will listen, just an empathetic shoulder to cry on, if you will, is so important. I know when I was struggling with my son's depression and suicidal attempts, and by the way, that story has a happy ending. He's doing quite well now, married to a lovely lady, has my grandson's about to turn 3. He's happily employed as a journeyman boilermaker, working for one of the local mechanical contractors in Chicago. But when we were going through the worst thing, the hardest and most important aspect of keeping him well and safe was keeping him connected to the world, his friends, his activities, whatever we could do to keep him talking, keep him engaged, was just huge. And if you are talking to somebody who's suffering, again, to echo what Marge and Patsy and Dave said, don't be scared to ask the questions. Are you okay? Are you in danger of harming yourself? You're not going to put the idea in their head. Believe me, if they're at that stage, they've been thinking about it for a while.
I think that's a really important point. And I know a lot of people, including myself, had that misconception that if you talk about it, you're going to give them, if they weren't there, you're going to push them there. And that's not true. So and that's what the Living Works course does help teach you. So again, I'd recommend that.
And more tools can never hurt.
Great idea, Tara. Somebody put in the chat that they have put a couch in her office and also converted a closet into mindfulness nap space. It's been a great conversation starter and just gives someone the ability to get a deep breath just by looking at it and knowing that there is a place for them to go, which I think is fantastic. Great job.
The couch would have been way too tempting in my working days to to close my door and go over for a little while, take a nap. But that's just
Dave
me.
and Dave are nappers.
Yeah.
I'm just jealous. I can't nap.
Oh.
One thing I wanted to add to, I know that we have thrown just a dump truck load of information at you. That you don't have to take on the dump truck. You can read the first page. You can print the posters that are done and put them up. This is a very easy thing to start with, small steps that we all have been doing this for quite a few years, and we all started somewhere too. I worry about too much being overwhelming, but we also worry about not enough information. We're shorting you. So if it means, like Dave was saying, they put up posters and send out an email. It could be as easy as you go onto the CFMA website, you go print them out on some of the bigger printers and you put them around. Then there's probably 20 toolbox talks. Do you have a newsletter? Do you have a safety meeting? Maybe you have one a month that throws out to there something as similar, or you start with one of those toolbox talks. Wow, bad. I can't talk. Toolbox talks. At the beginning of one of your CFMA meetings, and then after a year you have a lunch or whatever it is. Don't get overwhelmed. And if you do, call one of us, because we'll either talk you down or walk you through or help you drive the dump truck or whatever it is that you want. Great. We're so excited to have so many people here and to be interested. We as you know, I know saying drink the Kool-Aid is not appropriate, but we drink the Kool-Aid, we pour the Kool-Aid, we throw it on you. Anything we can do to save someone else or make some other company better, we're there. So choose what works for you, and ask questions. And like I said, there's a ton of stuff, and you can start small. And if you want to just go big and go crazy, call one of us, because we're your co-pilots.
You know, I was sharing some information with Tara earlier today. Tara's one of our newer members on the committee. And one of the things her company did, or is in the process of doing and talking about, as they're starting to put a program together, is put out water bottles that with the label, don't keep things bottled up. You know, and a little some flyers that go along with it. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I love that.
I know that we're well past our time, so I appreciate everybody hanging on. I do have one more question that came in that I think would be great if you all could respond to. So none of us are mental health professionals. How have you dealt with this aspect pertaining to the subject?
Well, I'll attack that first, because obviously we're not mental health experts at all. And we talk about that in our training programs. But the idea is to know where to channel people, to provide resources, to have resources available where someone that is in need, because we all are human. We all can connect. We all can talk. Our job is not to try and provide behavioral health services to an employee that's at risk. Our responsibility is, as a coworker and a friend and a fellow human being, is to recognize someone that's struggling and direct them toward resources and towards the experts and the people that can do something to help them. No different than what Marge did as far as helping to get someone to the help that they need, because we're not qualified to do that, but we are qualified with a little bit of education and a little bit of awareness to start recognizing the sign.
And a lot of heart.
And a lot of heart.
Yeah, think of it as filling the gap between, you know, the person who's dealing with the problems and getting them to professional help.
Yeah.
And we all always say, we're not a mental health professional, but we can get you to someone that can help. Or I'm a person that cares, or I'm in your industry, or something. Yeah, we're bean counters. It's okay to be a bean counter with a heart and a little bit of knowledge. And it's okay to say that. And that makes you closer to them too. Guess what? I do what you do. We work in the same company. We work in the same industry. We have this connection.
No different. We talk about it being the same as physical. If someone is injured out on the job site, you're not a doctor. You're not going to fix that broken leg, but you're going to get them to some services that will fix the leg and get him back up and walking. That's exactly the same here. It's just the same as physical. Our job is not to fix it. Our job is to just identify it, understand it, have the resources and tools available, and direct them to where they can get the help.
Because we do not play doctors on Zoom calls.
No.
Any other questions before we wrap up? I'd just like to thank our presenters, Dave, Patsy, Dave, you three are extremely powerful, and you're knowledgeable and extremely supportive. So when they say they're there to help you, please reach out to them. And if they don't have the answers, they will find someone who does. And if you're interested in getting involved with your chapter, if you're curious about how you can help your chapter members, maybe become a chapter champion or find more about what it means, and you know somebody who would be a good person, send me an email. I put my email in the chat, and let us know. We'll send you the invitation. That's for May 4th. I think that's next week. So definitely we appreciate you taking the time, more than the time we allotted. This is important information. It's meaningful, and it ultimately is life-saving. So thank you all for taking this very first step.
Thanks.
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 Give us a call.
Yeah,
We're here.
we're here.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.